Hey guys, Mr. Yaisley here. We're going to move on to the next part of Chapter D notes, which is all about subtracting decimals. Now, a great thing with subtracting decimals is it works very similar to addition or adding decimals. We're going to line these things up vertically, lining up the decimal points and the place values. We'll add zeros as needed. We'll subtract with normal rules, so a lot of times we have to borrow from the neighbor next door and all of that stuff you've learned before. And then we're going to get rid of unnecessary zeros in our final answer. So let's start with example A here, which isn't labeled, I apologize. This would be example B, and this would be example C. So example A says 47.6 minus 32.509. So first things first, I always, with subtraction, start with the first number, and I'm going to write that one, 47.6. Then I need to line up the decimal places. So here we go on my next number, 32 to the left, and then 509 to the right. All right, so now we're going to write our subtraction and our line. And then last thing, I need to add zeros. So we definitely have to add zeros when it comes to subtraction. All right, there's no choice in that matter because we're going to need to have those there. So with subtraction, just like addition, we start all the way on the right. And so we're going to go 0 minus 9. Well, we can't do that because that ends in a negative number. And when we're doing this type of subtraction right here, we have to make sure that this number on top is always bigger. So what we would do is we would go next door to the left and we would borrow one from that spot. Well, in this case, there's nothing to borrow from. So we even have to go one more and borrow one more from that. So I'm going to take 1 from the 6, and it's going to become a 5, right? And I'm going to give it to this side, and that's going to make this 10, right? Well, when that makes that 10, now I can borrow from my original one. So I'm going to take 1 from the 10, and that's going to become 9. And this is going to become 10. So now I have a number that is bigger than that one. So I can do my subtraction. So 10 minus 9 is 1. Then I go to my next one. 9 minus 0 is 9. 5 minus 5 is 0. Bring down my decimal place. 7 minus 2 is 5. And 4 minus 3 is 1. So my final answer here is 15.091. All right, so now let's move on to example B. We're going to follow that same pattern. Now, first thing I noticed though is my first number here is only a whole number, so it's just 3. Well, that's a ones place, so really we know that our decimal place is right after that. So I'm just going to put 3 point for right now with that decimal place behind it. Then I'm going to go to my next number and I'm going to line up decimal places. So I see that in the ones place I have a 0, then I have my decimal point, then I have 2, 5, 3. All right, and now I'm going to put my subtraction, my line underneath, and then I'm going to add zeros as needed. Well, I see that above all of these there's nothing, so I'm going to put a 0 here, a 0 here, and a 0 here. And just a reminder, you have to do that in subtraction. This is the work we have to show. All right, well again, we start at the far right and we begin by subtracting downwards. And remembering the top number always has to be bigger than the bottom number. Well, I've got 0 minus 3. 0 is not bigger than 3, so go next door. Nothing to borrow from 0 here. Nothing to borrow from 0 here. So I have to come all the way to this 3 to borrow. So that's going to become a 2, which now makes this 10. Well, now I've got enough to borrow to the next one. So I'm going to take 1 from 10 and make that a 9. Make this one a 10 now. All right. Well, now I got enough to borrow here, so I'm going to take 1 from this 10 and make that a 9. And this one now becomes 10. So now I've got a number bigger than 3, so I can do my subtraction. So 10 minus 3 is 7. 9 minus 5 is 4. 9 minus 2 is 7. Bring down my decimal place. And then 2 minus 0 is 2. So final answer here is 2.745. 7. All right, well now we're going to move on to example C. I want you guys to go ahead and try that one on your own, so pause the video, try this out, then check your answer against mine. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to line these up. So I've got 32.5, and then I've got 21.72. So 2 in the tens place, 1 in the ones place, then my decimal, and then 7 in the tenths place, and 2 in the hundredths place. Gotta get my subtraction sign, and then I'm going to put my line. All right, well once we've done that, now we need to go over and add any zeros. I see that a 0 needs to be added here, so I can do my work. All right, so starting on the right, 0 minus 2. Again, top number is not bigger than the bottom, so I need to go next door and borrow 1. So this 5 is going to become a 4, and this 0 becomes a 10. So I end up with 10 minus 2, which is 8. Then I've got 4 minus 7. Well, again, my top number is not bigger than my bottom, so I got to go next door again and borrow. So this 2 becomes a 1, and the 4 becomes a 14. So 14 minus 7 is 7. Then I've got my decimal place. Then I've got 1 minus 1, which is 0, and 3 minus 2, which is 1. So my final answer here is 10.78. All right, so don't forget when you're doing subtraction, always add those zeros in. You have to do that. You can go next door to borrow. Make sure that you're lining up your decimal points and your place values.